In this activity, we will be reading and interpreting data and putting it into different types of charts. We will use things like frequency tables and bar graphs to make it easier to interpret the data that we gather. Here we see 12 students who have been asked about their favorite hobby. If we hover over the mouse over each face, we will find out which hobby is their favorite. For example, this first child's favorite hobby is painting. Now, every time we click a child, there is going to be a mark that shows up in the tally box next to their favorite hobby. So for example, let's click on this child. Her favorite hobby is painting. As you can see, there's a tally that marks over here. This is one of the ways that helps us collect all the data so we have it all together in one spot, and then we can count it all up at the end and write our totals over here in the total spot. So why don't we go through each child and find out what their favorite hobbies are. Football, reading, and we're going to continue going to all of the children until we're done. So our tally chart is now done, our frequency table. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 students who liked football. That means we're going to go all the way to the total, and we're going to type in 4. We're going to keep doing this for each one to find out the total amount of children or students who liked a specific hobby. So dancing only had 1 tally. We're going to type in a 1. Reading has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to type in 5. And painting has 2. Now that we've collected the favorite hobbies of the 12 children, we're going to see if we could turn it into a bar chart, or also known as a bar graph. This is one way for us to look at what we've interpreted, the information that we interpreted, which is our frequency table here, and turn it into a way to display the information that we collected. Frequency tables are one way, bar graphs are another. There's also pictographs and a couple of other ways that you can show data. But for right now, we're going to focus on bar graphs. So let's look at the totals of each hobby that we have. Before we begin, we're going to look at the bar graph in and of itself without anything on it. We see over here the title. What is your favorite hobby? This title tells you the type of information that you will be learning about when you look at the graph. That makes sense because that's the question that all 12 of our students were asked. Next, when we look at the bottom over here, we see the four different choices that the students were given, and they picked which one was their favorite hobby. Let's look at the left side of our bar graph right here, and it says the number of children. It only goes up to 8, but there were 12 students who were questioned. Can you think of a reason why it didn't go all the way up to 12? We're only graphing our results, which are our totals here. And if you look at the frequency table, our totals have a high number of 5, which was for reading. So we don't have to go any higher than 5 because the bars that we make will only go up to 5. We didn't even need to go up to 8, but by going up to 8, it gives a little bit of extra space at the top of the bar graph and gives it a nice presentation. So we should begin graphing now. When we look at our frequency table, it says 4 people chose football. So we're going to fill in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 for football. So now our line for the top of our bar touches 4. Now let's move on to dancing and do the same thing. Only one person chose this hobby, so we're going to only color in 1 box. If you notice, our graph counts by 2s, and only one person voted for this hobby. So make sure that you're only shading in up to 1. We can assume that this is 1 because in between 0 and 2 is 1. There's no other number between the two. Now, when we go to reading, there's 5 students. So let's color in 5 boxes for reading. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, even though 5 is not listed on this graph, we can determine that 5 would be halfway between 4 and 6, which would be right here, and we go all the way over, which is right between 4, 5, 6. Now there are only 2 people who wanted painting, so we're going to color in up to the number 2. 1, 2, right here. So that's it for this bar graph. You collected your data, you created the tally marks, we added them up and created a frequency chart. Then we used our frequency chart to create a bar graph. These are 2 different ways that you can show your data and collect your data. We're going to practice one more time using a bar graph and collecting the data that we're going to put in the bar graph. In this case, we're not asking them about their favorite hobby, but we're going to ask them about their favorite color. So once again, we have 12 children, and we're going to click on each child to find out what his or her answer is. Then we're going to put the tallies, and then we're going to type in the totals again. So for these, you have blue, 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 red, yellow, blue, and we're going to continue through all of the students until all the tallies. So now when we look at it, we have pink is our first color, and there's 2 tallies. So we're going to go to our total and type in 2. Blue has 5, 6. So we're going to type in a 6. Yellow only has 1 person, so we're going to type in a 1 for the total. And red has 3, so we're going to type in a 3 for our total. So that's our completion. We collected the data and we created a frequency chart. So now we're going to move on and we're going to turn into a bar graph again. So once again, we see our title up here, which is what is your favorite color, which is the question that we ask the students, and that's what we're going to show in our bar graph. And then once again, we have our colors labeled down here. And along the side of our chart, we have number of children again. Once again, we only go up to 8 because if you look at our total, it doesn't go up to 8. It goes up to 6 actually. So we really don't need to go much further than 6 or 8. We don't need to go all the way up to 50 because we don't have anywhere near 50. So if we look at pink, there are 2 people total who liked pink as their favorite color. So 1, 2. Blue has 6 people who have a favorite color of blue. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yellow only has 1 person. So we're going to click it once. And just like before, even though there's no 1 on our bar graph here, we still know that 1 is right here on this line because it goes 0, 1, 2. So that's a logical number that would go there. And for our last one, red, there's 3 people total. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And if you mess up and you add an extra 1, you can always press the subtract and do it that way. But when you're writing on paper, you need to make sure you have all of your labels. You have your title, so we know exactly what your chart is about. We know the numbers that you collected for your totals, and we know what questions you were asking, what the colors were that were chosen, their favorite hobby, whatever the data was that we were trying to collect. We know what each person was deciding between. And before you finish a bar graph, always make sure that you double check that the heights of your bars are at the right lines. So we know blue was 6, so I'm going to make sure I go all the way up to the top and I look all the way across to make sure it's at 6, just in case, because bar graphs can be confusing sometimes, so you have to make sure you always double check your work. That's all for today, and you guys are going to keep practicing bar graphs, and you're going to practice collecting data from larger sources or smaller sources, and you're actually going to get to pick your own survey that you can ask your classmates, but that will be for a different time. So that is all today.